Hello, I'm Jonathan Darling, and I'm Senior Lecturer and Honorary Consultant in Paediatrics and Child Health at the University of Leeds and also Leeds General Infirmary. I'd like to tell you a little bit about my stethoscope and then reflect a bit about the significance of the stethoscope and the fact that it actually makes a positive contribution and is symbolic of the medical encounter. So first of all, let me show you my original stethoscope, which you'll see doesn't have its tubing, but I came back very pleased with this when I bought it as a third-year medical student from the medical equipment shop in Manchester. And then 5 years later, when I was moving into paediatrics, rather than buying a whole new stethoscope, I just got the paediatric head and swapped the tubing over. But I kept this adult one, I suppose, probably as an insurance in case I decided to go back into adult medicine if paediatrics didn't work out. And not so much for its sentimental value, but it's still here. So I've got my paediatric stethoscope now, and just reflecting a bit about the stethoscope. The first thing is to think that since it was discovered 200 years ago by Laennec in Paris, it brought in a new era for medicine when anatomy was combined with medicine, and so it brought a different approach to disease, which was then classified more structurally rather than based on symptoms. And it also started the process of technology helping us understand what was going on. Later on, in 1992, Neil Postman wrote a book called Technopoly, in which he was somewhat negative about the stethoscope as being the beginning of the intrusion of technology between doctor and patient. And that's increased over time, and he felt it was moving our focus away from the patient towards the disease and the technology. Now that is a valid point, and it's important for any doctor using technology to always keep the patient as primary focus and not to lose that focus on their concerns and symptoms and experience. But I would argue against Postman's contention that the stethoscope is a negative an intrusion into the doctor-patient encounter. I think, in fact, it will endure because it's a positive contribution to that encounter, and in fact emblematic of some key aspects of each doctor-patient encounter. And I just want to mention 5 of those aspects. So the first is that we draw close through the use of a stethoscope. It's only about 50 centimeters long, and so inevitably it brings us close to the patient. You can't do it from the other side of the room, and that signifies the wider aspects of a doctor coming alongside a person who's concerned about illness or has symptoms or is in distress, and that human coming close is so important as part of the therapeutic encounter. The second thing that happens is that there is touch involved, human contact, and that's built into the wider medical encounter through the process of clinical method examining, and we all know that touch is an important part of our humanity and what we do, and it's a positive contribution to the encounter. And then there's listening. We have to listen intently and to try and understand and to hear the signals that are being communicated from the patient through the stethoscope, and to assign significance to those and try and understand what they mean. And again, that has a wider significance for the whole encounter, where all the way through we're listening and trying to understand not just what is said, also what is unsaid, the body language, the signs through the stethoscope and other technologies we may use, and all of it is about listening to understand. Fourthly, this perceiving, to not just listen but to make sense, to try and bring these clues together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle to finally reach a diagnosis. And fifthly, there's adjustment. As I showed you earlier, my paediatric stethoscope is smaller than the adult sized one, and that's a simple message that really in paediatrics we have to adjust and to each patient's individual size, age, development, other needs. And that reminds us of a wider message for all of medicine, that we have to adjust to the particular needs of the person in front of us in that moment, and we mustn't forget to do that. So I hope I've explained to you why the stethoscope can be a positive contribution to the medical encounter and symbolises so much of what's important within it. And when I finish an encounter and I put my stethoscope down, I hope that it's not just a one-way thing, that signals have travelled up this stethoscope, but also that a message has gone the other way to say you have been heard and you've been understood. Thank you.